By the time the credits rolled on the story in 2011's Deus Ex Human Revolution, I knew I was all in for a sequel that I immediately felt was inevitable. This was a bit of a shock to me because even though I enjoyed pretty much every piece of dialogue and corporate intrigue that 2011's prequel had to offer, I still felt that there was a lot of room to improve in terms of gameplay. During my time with Deus Ex Mankind Divided, it is clear that a lot of improvements have been made, and whilst there is no aspect of the game that I feel has gotten worse, there are a couple of areas that I feel have come up a little short. Let's backtrack a little here. The games in the Deus Ex series are cyberpunk-themed action role-playing games set in a dark, dystopian future that combine first-person shooter, stealth, and role-playing elements. They are developed by Eidos Montreal and published by Square Enix. Before you start the game proper, you're given the option to watch a previously on Deus Ex video that recaps the entire story from Human Revolution. The clip is actually pretty lengthy at just over 10 minutes, and I highly recommend watching it whether you've played that game or not, as it does a very good job of condensing the goings on in the story up until this point. Once again, you play as Adam Jensen, an augmented former private security officer that, since the events of Human Revolution, is now working with Interpol to capture a terrorist group of augmented humans. Whilst doing this, he is secretly working for the Juggernaut Collective, a hacker group helping him to confront the Illuminati, a shadow group of individuals seeking to control the flow of information and therefore the general public. The first mission does something very clever. Like many sequels where you have spent the entire previous game leveling up your character and earning techniques, you are given complete control of all of your upgrades to use as you wish. This isn't clever in itself, as it's been done many times in the past in titles such as the God of War series. What is clever about it though is that even though the mission does teach you the basics of the stealth and combat mechanics, it doesn't teach you about all the abilities you have at your disposal, such as temporary invisibility, the ability to breathe in toxic gas, and also the ability to fall incredible distances and land safely in an orb of lightning. For fans of Human Revolution, yes, this still looks and feels cool as hell. This only slightly guided approach means you could set your ability loadout the way you liked in Human Revolution and be on your way, or you can stick to the basics and get comfortable during the mission, or you can experiment with a combination of the two approaches, as both are catered for in terms of the level design. Like any game that gives you everything up front, there is of course something that occurs very early on in the story that will rudely remove access to these powers. That is of course until you level up some. Mankind Divided is a stealth game first and foremost. Whilst you are provided with various lethal and non-lethal weapons to deal with your enemies, the controls in Human Revolution never felt responsive enough for me to be able to take the gung-ho first-person shooter approach. The basics of the controls are there, left trigger aims down sights and right trigger shoots, but there is something about the feel that was off. Unfortunately, this is one of those areas that needs improvement that I mentioned. The game controls perfectly fine during slower paced, stealth-oriented sequences, but the moment the shit hits the fan, there are a few alternatives other than to shoot your way out, and for me at least, the controls aren't responsive enough for this to be a viable course of action. Personally, this didn't affect me all that much, because on the few missions I did balls everything up, I just reloaded a save. Gotta get that perfect stealth rating. In between the main missions, you have free reign of a number of districts in the city to explore, hack, climb, vent crawl, and collect items to prepare for the next mission. There are also some optional side missions you can carry out, but be careful. These can disappear if you progress the main story to the point that the characters involved are no longer relevant or useful. It's these open world segments that bring me to the last of my issues with the game: performance. On Xbox One at least, if you're running around the open world city areas, you'll find that the game hitches and stops for about half a second. Understandable, as it's constantly loading a very large area, but while sprinting, these hitches can happen once every 3 to 4 seconds. Not game breaking by any stretch, but it can certainly pull you out of the illusion if you like to fully engross yourself into a game's universe. To be fair, I should state that I had zero performance issues during regular play of the game other than sprinting through these open areas. Small issues like these are often fixed or at least improved in patches and updates post-launch. So if you're someone that played and enjoyed Human Revolution, I heartily recommend Mankind Divided. It retains everything that was great about that game and adds more intrigue into the mix. Also, if you haven't played the Deus Ex game before and are looking for a good story to sink your teeth into, you'll find a brilliant yet bleak world to engross yourself in. If you're looking for a tightly constructed first-person shooter experience, such as Call of Duty though, this might not be for you. For people that are looking for a bit of cyberpunk stealthiness, dragging bodies into shadows and crawling through vents as a cyber-enhanced super agent, however, I think you might have just found your next game.
And that's about it for this edition of Player Attack. Thanks for watching. Next week, we're going to the pits. Well, sort of. We're looking at 3 brand new racing games. Forza Horizon 3, which is set in Australia, Gran Turismo Sport, the beginning of a new era at Polyphony Digital, and Assetto Corsa, which has just launched for Xbox One and PS4. In the meantime, you can catch us at playerattack.com. We're on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And if you've got something you want to say, send us an email, mailbox@playerattack.com, or just hop on our forums. Also, if you want to support Player Attack, you can find us on Patreon and help us bring you the latest in gaming news, plus all these wonderful interviews and reviews from the world of video games. Till next week, I'm Jessica Citizen, and this is Player Attack.